Ready?
I was born ready.
Greetings, YouTube. Welcome to Sunaru Gaming. I am Sly Graham. This is Graham Pike.
Hello.
Graham. Today's talk is around hardware, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Place to start it off is, what is the ugliest game console you can think of?
Ugliest. That's a good one. It's funny because most of them are quite stylish. I suppose the Nintendo Entertainment System, the 8-bit.
Oh, the first
yeah,
one.
just like, again, a bit like a brick, wasn't it? There was no attempt at style. But then again, I suppose in a way Nintendo were trying to be, we're a games company, whereas Sega, they started to bring in the idea of something a little bit more stylish and around the house, so general people would like it as well as games enthusiasts. So
yeah, the Mega Drive / Genesis was quite a good looking console. That's a strange.
I think so.
That's a strange way of good looking console.
Yeah, it was.
But it's, yeah. I mean, it looked, it looked neat. It was tidy. There was nothing to it.
It was curvaceous as well.
Yep, exactly.
Not as in a woman, but as in a sleek, rounded bits. You know, it wasn't just a box. Brick. Yeah, with some holes in it and a few knobs. It was a.
Mind you, the PS5. I don't actually like the look of the new PS5.
No, because you did an imitation of it, didn't you? Like a black thing with. Actually, I have a look at it. It does look very odd. Yeah, but you said it's huge as well, didn't you? But that's pretty odd. I don't know.
Worse. The controller looks hideous.
Oh, crumbs.
I'm sure it probably feels nicer because it comes along with the engineering, the way they build things, isn't it? But I'm not keen on the look of it. I'll still get one, but
yeah, it wouldn't put you off.
No. We mentioned in a previous video talking about Sega and Sega consoles and hardware. Sega, certainly for the Mega Drive, had a lot of add-ons and sort of peripheral hardware that they added on. You mentioned before there was something that you added.
There's a 32X which plugged in, and then there was the Mega CD or Mega CD drive or Sega CD drive, depending on where you bought, which country you bought it in. But that was like a harness type of thing that you put the Mega Drive in, and it was like a CD drive, and then a little gap where you plonked in your. I never had one. I just saw them. You put in your Mega Drive. And then the Sega the 32X was something you put in the cartridge port, and it just gave it supposedly some sort of 32-bit capabilities. And then I take it you put I never bought that. It was just, Sega have always been, apart from the Mega Drive, always been fairly disastrous at releasing and promoting and making consoles successful. even though I love their consoles mainly, Saturn, Dreamcast. Really good consoles and still worth having now. But
they ran really well as well.
Yeah, they were good machines. I mean, considering one of the downfalls of having a CD drive is the fact that it wears out. You know, like a cartridge, unless you mismanage it, unless you knock it about and be an idiot with it, you should just go and go. There's not many moving parts, are there? But with a CD drive, it's going to go, isn't it? And I don't know how easy it is to replace them. The majority of punters, it's broke, get a new one, won't they? But that's the main thing against CD. Obviously, things had to go onto disc or, as it is now, downloads. But yeah, it was. I just think, it's like as those add-ons for the Mega Drive. I don't know why they just didn't concentrate, or perhaps bring out the Saturn early. Why not beat PlayStation to the punch? But they didn't, did they?
Yeah, bringing up the PlayStation 2, the most successful console of all time when that came out in terms of selling, the amount of units sold. The original PS2, before it sort of went slimline and everything, that was quite a bulky beast as well.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and they usually start out bulky, and then they say, "Oh, we've got an improvement. You've got a cheaper knockoff version, and you're selling it as something better." But usually, oh no, you can't. It's not backwardly compatible like the original one was, and things like that. Although PS4 was not really backwardly compatible, was it? But the 3 was, and the 2. I mean, when I got my first PS3, you could play 1, 2, and 3, and it was great. Just put the disc in, and on it went.
I don't know why PlayStation have abandoned backwards capability the way that they have. It seems nonsense to me.
Yeah,
absolutely ridiculous. The amount of money they would make. I mean, I know that their also focusing on sort of digital downloads. But even if they had the digital library of it, people would buy it. The people are asking for it. They've been asking for it for years. It just seems ridiculous they've removed that from their machines. The PS2 had that really annoying function, or even if you didn't press the reset button and you sort of the original PS2, and you just did press the close the drawer button, it would still reset, which was annoying if you wanted to play import games and you had the disc that you had to switch.
Yeah.
And you had to get this little slide tool to pull it out and switch the disc and then slide it back in so it wouldn't reset. And that was a pain. And the little bit that would stick on the end of the CD drawer would always come loose and it would break. And it was a pain in the arse.
You're asking for trouble, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, and then the Slimline, I've got them laying around, but they're not. Oh, Slimline down there. I can't reach it. I've got a Japanese Slimline one down there. It's tiny, absolutely tiny. It's really nice compared to the big bulkiness that came
Well, even
out
the
with PS2.
PS1 was the same. That started off bigger and got smaller. And so did the Mega Drive. But, it seems to be the way of things. Slim it down. So I think trying to sell it off as something better, but they're just putting cheaper components and knocked off a few capabilities, and then charge more, saying it's a new console. At least with the newer ones, at least they say, well, actually the hard drive is now a terabyte or something instead of whatever it was originally. Yeah, because you used to be able to buy for the Xbox 360, you used to be able, and probably the other ones, used to be able to memory add-on things you could put on the side.
Oh yeah, you
could like attach it to the, on the 360. There's a thing on the side. You just remove the panel and plug, straight in. I remember getting one for it, but I hardly ever needed it as it is. I mean, I keep thinking that my PS4 is going to run out of memory, because all the games you download are always like 5 gigabytes or or more, 20 gigabytes, really big games. But, which is strange because I don't really tend to get massive universe games or anything, but there's just so much information, isn't it? Even in the rehashed old game, it seems to be big. Go on.
The 360 had a lot of problems. They used to call it Red Ring of Death, didn't they? And it's one of the. I mean, there's lots of consoles that were a little bit. I mean, you could probably think of more than me, certainly further back, of consoles that had all sorts of problems or didn't run quite so well.
Well, I can remember it wasn't the console, but the CD, Neo Geo CD. They produced this there was something wrong with the power pack. And so it kept. I think it either kept resetting the machine or just like cutting off briefly, which obviously So, but I seem to remember when I first got it. First one was alright for like a few weeks, then it went funny. So they sent me another one. That one never worked properly, and then I got a third one. It was hunky dory after that. It was alright.
Surprised you didn't give up. That's quite a lot of faff.
Yeah. But when you're Neo Geo, you expect that, because in those days, there was a lot of. It's not like now everything's instantaneous. You just go online and press a button. Those you have to sort of like. And usually I was quite friendly with the people I dealt with, because it was all the dealers I was working with in the Neo Geo days, which was like early mid 90s. Yeah, it was all on the phone, so you got to know and you knew them all by their first name. And
really?
Yeah, it wasn't going to be piss off, mate. It was like, yeah, we'll sort you out, and they did. So.
I remember you telling me the Neo Geo CD. Do you say it was a lot slower? The first one they came out with.
Well, the Neo Geo CD was good in my opinion in every way, except that it has only a single speed disc CD drive in it, which even back in the 90s, not fast. But most things were expected 16 to be whatever. Anyway, so that made the loading slow. But I mean, the way I looked at it was, but the game's like a quarter of the price. I'm not paying £200 for a game. I'm paying £45 for a game. So if I have to wait, and what was good was it had a reasonably large memory, for the time. So if the game was the older games, once you loaded them, that was it. No more loading involved. It's only the high meg games like the later fighters that you'd have in game. But even that could be a lot to do with programming. There were some games like. Polestar, but I know it's not your favourite, but that was quite a big game. But they did the loading so well; it was really clever. and they did simple things like, if you don't want the cinemas, the cinema screens, because once you've seen them a couple of times, you don't need to see a girl running through a corridor and get into a spaceship. You could cut all that out, because that would have to be loaded, because it was yeah. So it was like, well, I mean, even to be honest, I can get a bit annoyed with loading in modern. I think modern consoles, all that memory, all that speed, all that power, and you're still watching this little thing go whiz round on the corner while it goes from one stage to another.
Some games now are just as bad in terms of loading. Some are a little bit more clever. They sort of disguised loading as cutscenes, or they've disguised loading as transitioning through certain bits of I don't know, the world. You might crawl through something or whatever. But the ones where you still have loading screens, they can go on for some time. So you're right. I mean, there's not a massive difference. It did feel, I suppose, the change between that sort of PS3 360 era into the latest consoles at the moment, the current gen PS4 and Xbox X, One X, One S. Some of the loading screens are very long. Yeah, I mean, it felt like they've taken a step back in some ways, but I suppose the games are huge now. So I suppose it's like you're saying before, where you didn't mind waiting on a longer loading screen because the games cost less money. I mean, that makes sense to me. Even with the AES surprisingly quick when it does load, actually. Because it's direct cartridge, so it's never really a problem.
The AES was was no problem at all, but that was the downfall of going from cartridge to CD. But that was the one, because I quite like the Neo Geo CD. It had an interesting little sort of loading screens, and they made a little bit of a thing about it. And whereas on the cartridge, it was just like you plugged the machine in, plugged the cartridge in, switched it on, straight into the game. You had like a little menu on the CD, and the CD said, you could look at the music, you could listen to the music, or just check things out a bit more. So they gave you a little bit more. And also, as I said before, on the CD, you got a bit of the music was sometimes improved, not always, but some people say, "Oh, I prefer the original," but the traditionalists are always like the original, whether it's better or not. But yeah,
it can freshen a game up as well. I mean, if they just like change the music, like, oh, I've not heard this yet.
Well, sometimes it's the same tune, just with like an orchestra or a choir or a real instrument instead of buzzing and synthesizers. So it was nice. But when you're really into games and that's your main hobby, all those little things matter. I think they do anyway. I think the whole way, or any sort of, as I've said before, you tended. It's like it can be. There wasn't. I don't think it's like that now. But before the games became totally mainstream like they are now, there was a slightly tribal sort of football team thing about it. You like certain developers, or you like certain games console makers. Like I was always Sega rather than Nintendo, although Nintendo were considered the real gamers machine. And obviously Neo Geo overtook everything for quite a while, and and he tended to like certain. I don't know why. I think it's just human nature, especially when you're younger, to sort of support things and like things.
That culture's been around for a long time as well. I think you're right. It's very similar to like a football-like culture, and not so much now with the consoles. It sort of disappeared a little bit. The console wars. I know online. There's a lot of, especially now the new consoles are coming out. It's a lot. You're starting to see people emerge about Xbox or PlayStation, but it's definitely diminished from what it was, and a lot of that rivalry seems to be very much online based as well. When you talk to people, it's a difficult one now because the consoles, PlayStation have got all their first party
licenses.
Their first party licenses are so much better. All the games that are exclusive to PlayStation, rather the exclusives, are so much better than Xbox. And Xbox have been a bit clever. I suppose Xbox are more modern in the sense they've got all the Gamer Pass and things like that. And I can see why that's a good thing. But it's not as much as it used to, because I remember in the 90s, certainly when around the time of the Nintendo 64 and around the time the PlayStation 2 was coming out, people were very much one or the other, or same with the Dreamcast. It was more a tribal thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas it's more of a blur now than it used to. I suppose because consoles are more of a blur now. Because most, like we said before, a lot of the same sort of, certainly third-party games are coming out on both consoles, so it's less of a problem.
Yeah, and the Switch as well, I guess.
The Switch is, Nintendo have been very clever in what they've done with the Switch, and bowing out of being, because they've left PlayStation and or they left Sony and Microsoft doing we've got the most powerful console thing, look what we're doing, to just going off and doing their own thing. And then utilizing and saying, hold on a minute, we've got licenses for all these really cool old games, come and play us. So they've been quite clever with that, really. And they're a lot easier to, I suppose they're a lot easier to program for, because it's not, the cutting edge of power like the other two consoles are. But I think they've been very clever into, I don't play handheld mode very much, but now and again. But the fact that I can just take that console anywhere and just plug it into a TV anywhere I go, and I don't have to have a big bulky thing. I mean, the actual physical console that you put it into is around the same size as the handheld console itself. It just fits in any sort of bag or anything. So if you're going on holiday or traveling, it's perfect. So, I mean, they've been very clever with that. You do miss out. The one thing I find is I tend to go spend some time, I'm enjoying the PS4 for a long period of time, and I'm not asked about it. I think owning all three consoles as I do is pointless. The only reason I've got an Xbox at the moment is to play games with camera face online, because we're doing a lot more remote stuff. I probably wouldn't have one. I would probably just have PlayStation and Switch if we weren't doing the channel. But I tend to switch between them. When there's an exclusive I really want on the PlayStation, I'll be playing that for a long time. And then when it's not that, I'm always playing the Switch, because you've got all the Neo Geo games. I know there's Neo Geo on the PlayStation and Xbox One as well, but I can play them anywhere I want. I can take them over to Mrs. house. I can take it away when I go on holiday. There's loads of, you get independent games on all of them, but I tend to find it gets better independent games. And even Nintendo is surprised, because I'm not a massive fan of things like Zelda, and I'm trying to think of other, like Pokemon and other first party.
Mario.
Yeah, I'm not a massive Mario fan at all. I enjoy Mario Odyssey a lot, and I like Mario Kart, but I'm not a massive Mario fan. I've never been really into Mario.
No.
Breath of the Wild is one of the best. That hit my favorite 10 games of all time list. Breath of the Wild. That was just a completely different game. It was amazing. But I mean, I don't even need to have those first party Nintendo titles to enjoy what the Switch offers, and the Switch is a lot cheaper than the other consoles as well. So I mean, it's they all offer up different things. I can see why people would have two consoles, either an Xbox and a Switch, or a PlayStation and a Switch. But I can see why I don't see the point in having three, unless you've got friends that have one, and you can only use and play with friends on a certain console.
Yeah, sure. No, I know what you mean. I think I was fairly tribal up until the Dreamcast failed, and then I still got the PS1, 2, 3, and 4, but I would tend to prefer Sega to Sony. I always thought of Sony as being like this big bully boy company, sort of pushing their way into the game scene, but they were doing a lot of good things. I see that now, and yeah, I think they were very clever and brought in the 3D gaming really well. But no, I think up to the Sega Dreamcast, I was sort of apart from Neo Geo, I was preferred Sega. But now if there's a game, I mean, I'm not the big gamer I used to be, but if there's a game I really fancy, then we always like the Earth Defense Force game. Sometimes it comes out on only one of the consoles. So, and if when the new ones, the 5 and the X, come out, and if there's a new Earth Defense Force on one of them, that'll be the one I'll get probably. But it probably will be the PS5. I tend to like the two now. I've got nothing against Microsoft, but I tend to prefer the Sony consoles. But I mean, 360 was a great. I really think like that. It's a good console.
360 was a great console.
It was a good console, and it had some wonderful games. So I was mentioned before, so many really good import Japanese shoot 'em ups on the 360. It rivaled the Dreamcast for shoot 'em ups easily, and obviously the graphics were more powerful. So yeah, it was a good machine, very good.
I mean, I suppose at the end of the extremes, Microsoft is more of a multiplayer console. You do get multiplayer games on PlayStation, but PlayStation have more sort of one-player games, sort of single-player only. So that when you go to the extremes of the spectrum, I can see why you like PlayStation. And if you held a gun to my head and said PlayStation or Microsoft, I'm going to say PlayStation.
Yeah.
Very similar to what you said. I mean, it was a very sad day when I found out that Sega weren't making another console. And although I've enjoyed Nintendo consoles, I've never been a massive Nintendo fan. And I kind of root for Nintendo a little bit now because they're the older sort of game, the only one left.
Yeah,
that were originally in the fight.
And Nintendo, a much smaller company than the two biggies of Sony and Microsoft.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like doing the underdog. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I didn't get a Switch because I'm not, but I enjoyed the Cube, the Games Cube. I thought that was a nice little console. Had some really good games on it.
I have no idea where Nintendo are going. Because obviously you got the next generation coming out, and they've opted. It looks like they've opted, and quite cleverly so, because I mean it'd be a bit silly to bring, because their next console is going to be in a similar vein, I would have thought, to the Switch, not going to be state of the art in terms of power. I think they're looking at doing what they're doing because it's working. So whenever they bring their next console out, I think they're focusing a lot on the licenses for older games, which is sort of becoming their strength, I think. So hopefully we see a lot more of sort of older licenses and just ports to. I mean, you see loads of them anyway. They seem to come out on Switch before they come out on anything else.
Yeah, I think if I was the old gamer I used to be, like, as in more hardcore, I definitely would have got a Switch, because I can remember this when I found out that a few years ago that all these Hamster and that were doing really good Neo Geo conversions for PS4. It was annoying to you say, oh, that must come out. Oh, but it's only on Switch. Eventually, it would eventually get to PS4 usually, but it was annoying. You think, oh, I don't want to buy another console, but I want to get that game, you know. But as it turns out, I don't need any of them now. But I still do play. Funny thing is, even though I've got the Neo CD, SD, I still do play a lot of the times. I play it on the PS4 because I like the controller and I like it's just the ease of use, really. But, yeah.
You don't have to have wires trailing around. You don't have to.
Well, mine's all set up anyway. That's the only good thing about having an old console. You don't have to worry about another HDMI input, do you? Because it only goes. I think it goes into the SCART.
Is that what you've got? I've actually got a converter for my Neo Geo that goes into HDMI. It works quite well, which means I can capture the footage and stuff for video.
Yeah. I wouldn't be able to do that, obviously, but yeah. I'm taking there's an HDMI. Did you say for capturing it for your show you have to have a USB connection, or is it HDMI?
Yeah, so it is. So essentially what it is, a lot of people know about it now, so it's not a revelation, I guess, but it's quite a small little device. This is an Elgato HD60S. It doesn't capture 4K, it only captures HD. And you literally, if you can see the inputs there, you've got one HDMI in, so that'll be from, let's say, your PlayStation 4. This you don't need to really worry about for the audio there, because obviously the HDMI is going into the the USB here, USB-C is going into the computer and will carry the sound. And the other end has an out which goes to your TV, so you need two HDMI cables essentially. And that comes with a free program that allows you to record your footage, and you can take your webcam, which is when you see us on the screen playing the games and whatnot. That's all from the webcam, and you can plug in your microphone as well, and you got the one free program that does the footage, your camera and your audio, which is pretty handy. And if you've got a green screen or a blue screen, you can just key that out so it's invisible and you're just on the background. So it's quite a handy little tool, piece of hardware. And a lot of the old console, it's quite expensive getting a decent converter for the old consoles. Neo Geo, when I was researching that, it's quite fiddly to get something that's decent and projects the image well. I feel like what I've got works okay. It's not the best thing, but it's not the worst, so probably in the middle. The best one, from the research I found, it's almost they discontinued it, so it's almost impossible unless someone sticks one on eBay. And even then, they're silly money. And I'm like, well, it's HD footage. I don't need it 4K. I just need it decent, and to get. And no one, you're playing Neo Geo. No one's expecting it to look as good as a PS4 game in terms of how bright everything is, and it's deliberately that sort of arcade style of game. So, pardon me, it doesn't matter if it's slightly. It's not the top range of quality of conversion to HDMI, really.
No. I'll tell you one console we very rarely mentioned, the Atari Jaguar.
Oh, yes.
Have you ever seen one?
I've seen them. I've never played one.
No, it was it came in out in the 32-bit era, but it was purported to have like 64-bit capabilities. But we never witnessed whether because it didn't really outperform anything else. Was it 32-bit was out at the time, or 60? Or I think I can't remember. It might have been just the PS1. I can't remember which one it was. I think it was around between the 1 and 2. But it was quite a nice looking console. But again, it's like take what Sega do, but even worse. They just had hardly any games for it. And none of them used the power of the console if it had that power, which it purported to do. I remember it came with a game called Cybermorph, which was a 3D sort of world, but it was like a futurist, sort of. You were in a small spaceship going around this planet, but it wasn't realistic looking. It was all sort of stylized, and it was all right. It's not a bad little game as it turns out. It was a good little exploration, shooting game. But no, it's one game that people really ranted on about in the day was Tempest 2000, which Tempest. It was like the guy, was it somebody Minter who originally wrote the original one? Can't remember his first name. He'd done this. I think he'd programmed it for, and it came out first on the Jaguar, so it was a big thing. Eventually it went, but it was quite a while before it got another. So it was like, I just got it because I thought a nice powerful console. Might something that's better than that. But it was another console which promised a lot but didn't really, and died off. And I don't know. Atari, apart from they were at the beginning of consoles, I never had those really, did Pong and things like that. I never had their early consoles, but that's my first experience with Atari. And you thought, well, they've been in the business for years, it should be pretty good, but it didn't fulfil its promise by a long way. And they had the Lynx, which was the handheld, which wasn't bad. As I mentioned, the game I played on there a lot called Crystal Mines 2, which was sort of action-y puzzle game. Sort of like, it's a bit like a puzzle game mixed with Pac-Man or something, but it was good. Yeah, it was a good little game. There was another one on there. Was the name I can't remember. It was like a bit like a platform shooter. I can't remember what it was called. Mm-hmm. But I enjoyed it. It was. I remember because you sort of go along and you go up and then back, and you could see the other stages up higher and things like that. It was quite good, but. No, I can't remember what it was called now. It was such a long time ago, so I probably didn't have it that long. But no, that was a console that came and went pretty rapidly, But when you're excited about things, you just, I've got to get that, And then obviously,
but it's new, and all the propaganda that's coming out about anything that's new comes out as well. It makes you want to, especially because it's very different now. Everything's sensationalized, but. I suppose in some way things were in the 90s as well, but you would read about things in magazines and you'd see adverts just on a shop like a little stand or something, and it would just have an advert of what was new coming out. Whereas now
Yeah.
everyone knows about it a year or 2 years before
Yeah.
it's coming out, and you get shown footage and fed stuff all the way through. So when it something did come out, it was more of a novelty. Definitely.
Yeah.
Jumping back to around the time the PlayStation came out, there's two things with the actual hardware of the PlayStation. Or more so the PS2, I suppose. At the time, yeah, definitely PS2. I mean, at the time when I had a Nintendo 64, I think I actually bought that up north. I think in
Was it, yeah,
Nelson.
Manchester, wasn't it? Oh, was it
Uh,
Nelson?
it was either Manchester or Nelson. I can't remember. Nintendo, something a Nintendo 64 and the Dreamcast also had was 4 controller ports,
Yeah.
which the PlayStation didn't have. You had to buy this silly little
Add-on, yeah.
periphery thing, yeah, and it didn't always work. Not that there was that many games on the PlayStation at the time that would have more than sort of 1 or 2 players anyway.
And or would there be more than 2 people in the house to play it anyway? So yeah.
Yeah, it was very rare that all 4
Mm.
ports were used, unless you had a group of kids, a group of friends around. But the other thing was certainly the first PlayStation when that came out, and it might seem second nature to everyone now because I mean PlayStation controls, you see it all the time; it's a normal thing. But when the first PlayStation controller came out, I remember just not liking it at all. The D-pad was split, had these. I mean, if you know more than me, I suppose. The D-pads on most controllers, they were usually a circle with a little raised sort of plus, weren't they?
Yes.
Most of the time, or there were a plus that you could move around. PlayStation had this little broken thing, so it was very
Yeah.
hard to adjust moving because it would never move quite as smoothly as the other consoles did. And it's before they added analog controllers to the controllers as well. That came in much later.
I'll tell you something. Even now, if I'm playing an old-fashioned game, 2D game, I always use the square, the old-fashioned analog, or was it
Oh yeah,
digital? I still, your kind of PlayStation 4 controller, you've got 2 sticks, and you've got like the old-fashions. I always use the old-fashioned one. I don't know why. I just think it seems to me to fit in better with the way old games move.
mm.
I think that sort of analog, it seems a bit wishy-washy in comparison.
Yeah, it's not quite that. My sound went then. Apologies. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound a bit different, but yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I think it does work better. I also think they've improved it a lot since it first came out. When you look at one of those first
Yeah.
PlayStation controllers, the cross or the plus, because it's what we call the X button on a PlayStation, they actually tell us is the cross.
Mm.
The plus of the D-pad was so far apart and was just, it's a lot better now on the modern PlayStations.
Yeah.
And I think the PS4 controller is really nice and comfortable. I think out of all the PlayStation controllers, because the PlayStation 3 was this little like squashed diddy thing. It was still quite small, and I wasn't that into it. And when the PS4 came out, it actually felt better in the hands. Their controllers.
Yeah,
You're
because
right about the analog sticks on the
when
they're
the
not
Xbox
quite.
first came out, their controller was really massive,
It
and
was.
and people were saying, yeah, people with diddy hands were saying, oh, it's too much, so they brought out a compact version. But no, I thought I like the Dreamcast controller. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought it worked well and it looks good, and you had the little plug-in memory unit as well, which was
It's
interesting.
yeah, I like the. Was it Nintendo that for the Nintendo 64 it focused Rumble? I know that controllers they rumble now, but originally it was a separate
Yeah,
thing you had to buy. Was that something the Nintendo 64 brought
a
in
Rumble pack.
first? Yeah,
Yeah, I think it could be. Yeah, it's hard to remember. I've
and I
never
remember
been
the
that.
Dreamcast did as well,
I'm
but
Yeah, I'm not that bothered about rumbling.
no,
I think.
I
I mean,
don't. I turn it off.
as I said, I don't want something buzzing in my hands. It's just annoying. Another thing I don't like, screen shaking. Screen shaking on or off. Off. I
Oh,
don't,
okay.
like it's like if fire at something, you can't
Yeah,
see. I think I don't want to see what's going on. I don't want. It's not. I'm not. I don't see through a camera. I see through my eyes. And when something shakes around, it doesn't look like it does on a
yeah.
film. So let's just have it as straight as so it is as visually easy as possible, so we can, so we see what we're doing. because again, it's sometimes, like we mentioned before when we were talking about 2D, I think sometimes realism in the expense of being a good game is not a good thing. I'd rather a really good game. I don't care how realistic it is. I want it to be good, you know. I want it to play well and enjoy it. I don't care.
Not be distracting.
Yeah, not being, you know, sort of failing on the accuracy of your the game mechanics to make it look good, you know. Or let's make it hard by the bloody screen going all over the place. How can I concentrate on that? You know, anyway.
Couple of odd additions on the first time I played, not the first time, but very early on in the PS4 when it era when it came out. Playing a game and all of a sudden a sound comes out of the controller. I don't like that either. That's really annoying and distracts. You'll be fighting and it comes out of the controller. You're thinking, what the fuck is going on? I'm trying to do something on the TV and there's something right in front of my face that is.
Yeah, it must have. It did surprise me. Yeah, when it first happened, I thought, where's that coming from? You know, I've forgotten that it, you know, the thing could make a sound as well. but yeah, it doesn't. I mean, most of the games I have are retro games, so that doesn't feature. So it's all right by me.
It's just an odd thing to. And the other thing that's more, probably because I can see why people might enjoy that. Maybe for like atmospheric and horror games or whatever. The one thing about the PlayStation 4 controller is that stupid touchpad at the top. That I've not once have I seen a really good use for that. I've seen people add things into games where you have to use it. Yeah.
and also the start and select buttons, they're really close to it and they're hard to see. Press the select button, where is it? You know, it's not like it's that's badly designed. Overall, I like the 4 controller. But yeah, having those 2 select buttons is like quite difficult to see and touch. And then that stupid thing at the front, which, you know, all I do is just sometimes, I think usually just calls up menus, doesn't it, if you press it? It's just like, no, don't need it.
I've tried to give it a function for certain kinds of games. Again, I turn it off. It's just pointless, an absolute pointless. Why not put things there that might be more innovative and more useful? I know that the PS5, I think the PS5 controller is ugly. They've done something there. I don't know what they're doing with it. It's probably just a touchpad surface, knowing PlayStation, knowing Sony. But yeah, I mean, that's the only thing with the PS4 controller is the additional thing for it, where it to make a sound, and then that stupid touchpad that is just waste of space and just pointless.
I think there's lots of gimmicks. I think it's like, I don't know if you remember, but everybody, I don't know how many years ago it was, had surround sound, and they'd have speakers behind them, speakers to the side. And I was thinking, I'm not looking at a picture that is in 3D. It's not around me. Why would I want the sound coming from behind me? You know, it's a novelty, but it's also annoying. I thought when we got a really good telly, I said, I'm just going to have. I had a good decent stereo. I said, let's just wire up to the stereo system and enjoy a good. I'm not going to. And funny enough, nobody has them anymore. There's just those sound bars, don't they?
Yeah, which aren't that great. And they're good, but it's a similar sort of thing, like you're saying.
A decent telly should have half decent. Yeah, because it used to be in the old days the onboard speaker was rubbish, but nowadays they're quite good. So yeah, I don't see any point in adding a lot. But yeah, I used to quite enjoy it through my. Well, I remember an Xbox. I think it was the console when I first started putting it through like decent stereo. It was impressive because you get some great sound effects.
Same with VR. VR is something that I don't get, and I'm sure it looks, because I've not really tried it, so I'm not going to knock it in the sense that say it's rubbish. I'm sure it looks amazing, but it's very much a novelty thing, and it doesn't appeal to me at all.
I think the very first VR was Nintendo brought out. I can't remember what it was called now. It was like I think it was on like a little stand, and you looked into it. That was a 3D game thing, but it didn't do that well. But I can't remember what it was called. But I can remember years ago where you could buy gaming specs, and it said, you know, obviously the screen on the inside of these specs that you buy. So you've got like a big pair of like shades on the inside. It's equivalent of having a 68-inch screen or something. I'm thinking, God, you're going to get a massive headache if you sat there watching. You know what I mean? I mean, can you imagine that? If you like playing games for hours rather than a quick blast, hours on end, and you got this screen right up to your thing, it's not going to work, is it? That's my view. I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean,
until they can plug it straight to the cortex of your brain or something, it's not going to work properly, I don't think. And I'm not having anybody do that to me, so I'll be dead by the time anything like that happens anyway.
Unless we live in the Matrix.
Yeah. Somebody sort of in the back of your neck. No thanks.
Oh dear, it's funny. Yeah, I mean VR is something that I'm sure it looks amazing, because everyone that I know that's tried it said it looks amazing. And then when you said to them, do you actually own it or would you actually buy one, they're like, well, no, not really, because a lot of the games are not as up to the same sort of spec that a lot of games that come out, AAA games and things. I know that Skyrim and there's a few others that have adopted this VR thing. There's not many of them. And a lot of the VR games are sort of more like little mini puzzle games that you just move stuff around in than it is actually playing a game so much. The peripherals that I do miss, I miss light guns and just how fun they were, even at home.
Yeah, I don't know why they stopped. They were really good. Especially like Virtua Cop on the Saturn, that was brilliant. And there was another one, whose name I keep forgetting, another sort of shoot 'em up that came out after that. There was Virtua Cop 2, and then there was another Sega light gun game, which was of a similar ilk. Unfortunately, for that, but they were great. I mean, funny because we only ever had one light gun. Well, in fact, I think we did have two, but my wife preferred using the consoles, the controller. So she'd be like moving I could do that. I can't keep up with it like that, but no, I really liked it because I didn't. You didn't look down the sight; you just aimed it.
Yeah,
and you got good at aiming exactly where something was. So
it was really immersive as well, because you would you'd know how many you were running out. You have to press off of the screen to reload, and then you start pointing.
That's right. You knew when somebody's going to bob up, and it's like you bang, dead. It made you feel like it was a good feeling.
People would still enjoy it. I think it would still sell as well. Okay, it's a bit different now. I think a lot of it's to do with the TVs and the way they're set up. But if you look at the way that they've tried to reintroduce motion and those stupid not iToy, but pardon me, all those different cameras for the consoles they got, the PlayStation one and the Kinect for this, and then the Wii's got even the Wii itself's got a little thing that you put on the TV.
Yeah, we had a 360.
If you do that, then why can they not just get a gun that comes with that and make more on-rails shooters, or a game where it's mixture and you have to pick up a gun all of a sudden and start using the gun instead, or I don't know. But I think people would. I think it would still sell. I think people would still buy it.
House of the Dead could make a comeback, couldn't it?
Definitely. And it's still popular in arcades.
Yeah, I don't think game-wise it was as good as Virtua Cop 2 or that other game I can never remember the name of. But it was the graphics and the atmosphere of it made up for the fact that it was just average to gameplay. But yeah, it was. No, I totally agree. I can't see why that couldn't come back. I remember we had that motion thing for the 360, because my wife used it for doing like exercise games, like being a raft and you have to jump up. I tried it once. Thought, I'll be knackered at the end of this game. Because in your living room, suddenly you're jumping up in the air or leaning to the side. It's really weird. That's not really my thing, really, but it was a bit funny, amusing to do it just the once. But
it's funny how a lot of that was forced, because I know that not so much in the 360 it wasn't forced. I know in the latest, the current gen Xbox, when that came out, it sold with the latest version of the Kinect, and they were sort of pushing it on people. People didn't like it, but I remember. And it had a novelty to it. There were games, because I had the Kinect. I had the Kinect on the 360. And some of those games were fun, but they're not things that I would go back to. I enjoyed them for a short period of time, and then it was nothing. Whereas the light gun games, I remember being in college and just plugging the Saturn in again. I had a friend over, and then we were just playing, again, Virtua Cop and House of the Dead and all those games. A lot of those sort of on-rails, light gun shooters. I suppose it's a very specific genre. And then when people think of that now, they think specifically arcades, because you go into a seaside arcade and there's always a light gun game, whether it's Dino Crisis or House of the Dead. But again, people play it. I always see people playing those games. It's not like they're left.
It's funny how callous you can get because, like, you're not obviously supposed to kill the bastards, but even if you are, I'd luck.
I remember Virtua Cop, if you shot an innocent person, it would take a life away from you.
Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes you would just do it anyway because they're annoying. Like, fuck you.
Yeah, that was good game.
Someone help me.
And sometimes you had like a choice, so you could go left or right and things like that. It's a little bit of a. You just shot the way you wanted to go. If you want to go right, you shot the right side. But yeah,
it's something I miss. I think that's something from gaming that I do miss, that sort of has been left in the past a little bit, because you just don't see it for home consoles. It's possible. The Switch has something called Labo, which is these things that you make that you can use in games. It's possible you can make a gun, but I'd rather just buy one and then I can use it on specific games. And they'd have to put. I know House of the Dead's put. I think that's on Switch, but
I don't read up a lot on the mod console, so I don't know if they've ever given a reason why they don't do it.
Yeah, on Rails games are not as popular as they used to be. It's almost. I mean, I've watched a lot of gaming YouTube channels. Even the ones that are around my age, they sort of frown upon on rail games now, which I don't know. That seems to be an online thing.
But it doesn't have to be on Rails to be a light gun game.
No.
You could have an open world or just a city you can wander around. Anybody that comes about, get your light gun out, blow them away, or whatever, or don't. But it's no, I can't see why it has to be on Rails. I don't mind on Rails.
It could come with a holster/controller with like an analog stick on it, so you're walking around with the holster, and you just pull the gun out and start using the gun.
Yeah, no, actually, that is. If they ever bring them out, I'll be getting one definitely. But
Nintendo, PlayStation, make it.
Yeah. Well, why not? Because they brought out, as we've said many a time, the old 2D games are coming back. Why can't they bring back the light gun?
It's true.
Might be a winner.
I really do miss those light guns.
Yeah.
Even the third-party light guns were good as well. They weren't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I think. Did you buy me one or give me one for the Saturn? It was a massive sort of grey thing. You pressed it, and the light would just go down the side of it.
I can't remember that one.
I think it's probably. It's probably in the loft. I still have it somewhere. That was. I think it was a third-party one, but it looked cooler than the one that came with the games. So the ones that came with the games were really basic. This one, you pressed it and the light would go down the side of it, and everyone was really impressed by it.
No, I was always impressed with how accurate they seemed as well. You know, because you used to start off by shooting the little things in the middle of the screen to get it tuned in, didn't you? But no, they always seemed fair and accurate when you played them.
And very immersive, very immersive.
Yeah, I never thought, it's on rails. I just thought, you just wait for the next bad guy, aren't you? Or non-bad guy. But yeah, I quite like rescuing people. That can be quite good as well. Yeah, a bit like in Prehistoric Isle 2. I've got those pods hanging from.
Something we've touched on before with hardware is how other big gaming brands have tried to approach the handheld market, where certainly in the 90s and early noughties, Game Boy, and late 80s, where Game Boy was sort of reigning supreme. There'd been a lot of, you mentioned the Lynx, Sega had the Game Gear.
Yeah, I had one of those.
Yeah?
I thought it was all right. Yeah, it was reasonably good quality. But no, I said Game Boy.
Why do you think that lost out to the Game Boy, or why do you think the Game Boy was always in that number one spot, and it was very difficult for the other consoles?
I'm guessing because Nintendo were very good at producing games for it.
There were a lot of games for Game Boy.
I've never owned it. Have I? No, I've never owned a Game Boy. The nearest I got was that one that you could attach to the GameCube, so you could play Game Boy games on the GameCube.
Oh, I know the one you mean, yeah.
But I never, which I thought was a really good idea. Just put a little base thing underneath your GameCube.
They had that for Nintendo. They had that for Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, and GameCube.
Yeah.
They really kept that up. Because I didn't know there was one for Super Nintendo, and I went round to my friend's house who had a Super Nintendo. and he had a cartridge where you put a Game Boy cartridge in. I was like, oh wow, you could play a Game Boy game on your TV, and it never looked amazing on the TV anyway, because obviously it was built for a tiny little screen. But
Yeah.
then Nintendo 64 did it, which never worked. Again, it was a piece of hardware that you would shove in the bottom of a 64 controller. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't.
Yeah. Well, the one on the Cube was particularly made for it, and I only played a few Game Boy games on it, but it seemed to work and look not too bad. Yeah, it's going to be slightly pixelated, but overall it was fairly decent. I was funny you talking about an handheld. I was thinking Microsoft have never bothered with a handheld, have they? So
No, they haven't. They haven't. I suppose when they entered the gaming market, it's that they were taking on the likes of the Dreamcast and PlayStation. And I think in that time, in the early noughties, I think a lot of people had given up. I can't think of any other handhelds after the ones we've mentioned that tried to take on Game Boy, which evolved into the Advance, then the SP, and then Nintendo DS and whatnot. And I wonder if people just found that every time they were entering the handheld market, they just weren't doing so well. And obviously,
well, we had PSP and the PS Vita, didn't you?
yeah, they didn't do that. I loved it. I've still got PSP games. I loved the PSP when that came out. But it couldn't compete with Game Boy for library and no matter which modern. So when the Advance came out, it could play all of the Game Boy games before it. When the SP came out, it could play all the Game Boy games before it. So you not only did you have that console, you had the previous consoles of the back catalogue as well.
Yeah.
And PSP was great, but it had a lot of games that came out initially on I think it was PS2. I remember it came out towards the end of the PS2 life and the start of PS3, didn't it? It had a lot of games that came out on those consoles, but that had a lot of stuff removed from them. Obviously, it's not as powerful as a home console.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed the games both on the home console and on the PSP at the time. I must have been 11, 12, maybe a little bit older than that. And I enjoyed it, but the library for PSP wasn't that big. And I think also what killed it is they had little movie, I don't know what, AMDs they call it, that you could put in there as well. And I think there was a lot of money and time and effort that went into that. And then the Vita evolved into the Vita, which came out later on. But I don't think it's looked on as a massive success, the PlayStation Portables. I don't know whether that's just because PlayStation didn't put enough money into development. There's some cool games on them. But it never took off in the same way that Game Boy did, or Advance at the time, and SP at the time. And then the DS, I didn't get the DS when that came out. I had a DS, but I didn't get why it was so popular. It had 2 screens, and the top one was always crap, and whatever was on there was naff. The games were pretty much the same looking as a Game Boy, so it was basically just a really advanced Game Boy. And then I sort of went off it. And the Switch is different entirely because it is a home console that you can take. It's the power of a home console that you can take around.
Yeah.
It's not as powerful as PlayStation. Blah blah blah.
I got it.
But yeah, I mean the Game Gear. I knew a few people that had Game Gears. They just didn't seem like there was a lot of games on it. I remember everyone seemed to have Sonic.
Yeah, I remember I used to have a role playing on something Oasis it was called.
Okay.
I quite enjoyed that. It's just I remember taking it on holiday with me and.
Was the battery life? Wasn't there something to do with the battery life or the adapter that was a pain?
It might have been. I can't recall. I only had one for a shortish period because I don't like handhelds in general. Because I was just thinking, I don't want to play an action game on it because it's too small. If you play like an RPG, you get a bit of eye strain because you're staring at it for like a couple of hours at a time. In those days, the screen was 3 or 4 inches.
Yeah, and they were crap in sunlight as well.
Yeah.
If you were outside.
I think our wife really got into Animal Crossing. I don't know if you've heard of that game.
Oh yeah.
I think that came out on the Game Boy Advance or something like that recently.
I think they've released them on Switch as well.
yeah, I think it's come out on all the new consoles as well. But yeah, it was originally a Game Boy Advance. But what was quite novel about that was it's basically you're sort of building up a little house and some farms and just building up a life. But what was good about it is if you didn't go, if you left it, when you came back, you know, it'd be like a load of crap in your house, or rats or ants, and people say, "Oh, where have you been?" You know, they sort of like bother you about it because you haven't been playing it for a while. You know, it's quite
When
clever.
you start that game, isn't it? Do you not get into debt straight away in the game? You sort of buy a house and then all of a sudden you're in debt.
I don't know. I didn't play it. Just Karen that played it, but
I think
yeah,
there's
she
a
played me about
running
it.
online. I don't know enough about it. I think there's a running online joke that it's the original debt simulator.
Yeah,
There's a character on there. It forces you to buy a house and then become in debt, and then you spend the whole time trying to make money and keep the
yeah,
house and everything going.
yeah. I mean, whenever I watched her playing it, it did look quite good. I think she played
It
it on the
always looked
keyboard.
nice. It always really looked nice.
Yeah, and there was what was another one she's like something Moon, Harvest Moon.
Harvest Moon, I remember that. Yeah,
Yeah, I can't remember what console it was on now. Was it
PlayStation
PS2?
1, and then I think it might come out on PS2 as well. I think there's a sequel.
Yeah, I think it was two. But yeah, again, my wife and I got completely different tastes. She loves all this like building, and you know, she used to really like on the Mega Drive. It was theme park, you know.
Oh
She
yeah.
like, you know, you had to order stock and what? You know, I just want to shoot stuff. I don't want to order bloody coders to keep the shop going. You know, that's like a proper job. You know, it's just yeah. But anyway, she liked it. I tell you what I really like was the Neo Geo CD stick. You know, with Neo Geo, you could mainly it came with that massive, great big controller, didn't it? I think is that one you got there at the back there?
Oh, that one.
Or was it?
That's yeah, I've got two. I've got yeah, that's the standard one, and then I've got the Hori or Hori. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Well, when the
Metal.
Neo CD came out, they brought it out with a smaller version and like a slightly peanut shaped.
Oh,
You know,
I know the
sort
one
of,
you mean.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what I got when Fraser got me the Neo Geo to go with the SD. That came with two of the CD, and I always preferred them. The other one it's just like massive because you sit there with it on your lap, and it was just like. But this one was just a bit small, a bit more curvaceous. Probably one of my favourite controllers. Yeah, it was good.
I've been meaning to maybe pick one up. I kind of like the idea of having the original one, the Hori one, or Hori, I don't know how you pronounce it. The little controller that's more sort of traditional for what we use now, and then the one you're talking about. It'd be nice to have one of each.
It would, yeah. Because initially when you first CD first, I think you just got the little Diddy control pads, you know, like you got with the Nintendos and the Segas. And then they brought out quite quickly afterwards. They brought out these smaller sticks, and I really like them. Probably my favourite controller. Yeah. What about yours?
Mine probably between. I really like. Do you know? It's strangely not so strangely with the first one. It's between the Saturn. I really like the Saturn controller, the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, which is designed. I think Microsoft designed it. I think because as much as I enjoy playing PlayStation, I don't, and the PlayStation 4 controller is much better than the other ones. It definitely doesn't stand out as my favorite, but I think the Pro controller. I enjoy using the Hori Analogs joystick for the Neo Geo, but yeah, probably that one. I'm sure if I went back to a Saturn controller now, it'd feel really odd.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It probably feel a bit flimsy now, I guess.
And Diddy, because they're quite small compared to.
Yes, I mean, the thing is, like those controllers I'm talking about was designed for an arcade machine. Like it wouldn't be good for a modern game. There's not enough buttons. I mean, because obviously you got the two things at the back as well as all the ones on the top. So, but no, I enjoyed, you know, joystick in your left hand, 4 buttons to press on your right. Yeah, it was good, and you can do a lot of things with that, you know, to a certain extent. Anyway,
there's something to be said for using the joystick controllers, and I know that Hori, I don't know how you pronounce it. They make them for all consoles, even now, because I nearly picked one up for the Switch, just for when I'm at home and I don't want to. I mean, the Neo Geo is plugged in, but I've only got a certain number of HDMI cables on the I've got one of the first sort of generations of modern TV, so it's only got a limited number of HDMI channels. I'm sure I'll probably get an extension for it, but it's it's not always plugged in, but the Switch dock is always plugged in. So it'd be quite nice to play some of those old Neo Geo games on a wireless modern. Actually, they're not wireless; they're wired actually. But I mean, I was
But
half thinking of getting one for it.
my TV's even older because all it's got is one HDMI and one of those, like the when the 360 first came out, it didn't have HDMI. It had this like 5-pin, 5 different.
Oh, yeah, the component cable
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
but it was instead of the original component was 3, but this was 5, and it was pretty much, it was very sharp. It worked. But yeah, my TV's got one. It's got a component thing, an HDMI, and 2 SCARTs, and then obviously AV for the aerial, and that's it. That's all it's got.
Yeah, I don't think my TV can even take component. It can take. It can take the 3, but I don't think it can take the 5. I've got a PlayStation that's 5, but then I got converted to HDMI. So
yeah, I got a 3-to-1 HDMI thing because we've got 2 PlayStations and a DVD player that all. So, but it's supposed to. When you press the button, when you press the whatever machine you've got on, it's supposed to automatically go to that, but it doesn't.
Oh, really?
The one that always forces its way in, PlayStation 3, put that on, goes straight to it.
Oh,
the other
wow.
one, there's a little button on it, it just goes to 1, 2, or 3, just press it until it goes on to the one you want. But the PlayStation 3 whams straight in. As soon as you switch that on, it goes to it. So,
oh, that's something. That's a good point with modern hardware, modern consoles. Is I've had to. I think I forgot. Since I got the new PlayStation 4 Pro last year, I haven't turned it off. But what I've noticed is whenever I turn with the new consoles, you turn the TV on, it automatically turn the consoles on, which can be annoying. It's all right sometimes, but it can be. I've not turned it off on my PlayStation, which I booted up the other day. I was like, and it just keeps coming on by itself. I need to go in the options and turn it off.
Yeah. 3 favourite consoles of all time?
There you go. Go for it.
My 3 favourite consoles: Neo Geo AES, Sega Dreamcast, and Xbox 360.
Brilliant.
But
narrowing it down to 3. Definitely the Saturn, because it's my first console. You tend to find people a lot of the time in their first console is usually one of their favourites. Dreamcast, and at the moment it's definitely Neo Geo. So that's getting a lot of play.
Yeah. Good choice. Yeah, good choices. We're not that far apart, really.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Like, share, subscribe, comment below. Any questions for Graham or myself, please put them in the comments, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.